Some nights, right before a new year, the air feels different, quieter, heavier. I feel it most when the house has gone still and even the clock seems to whisper. If you're over 55, if your rooms don't echo the way they used to, you may know exactly what I mean. There are questions that start rising in that silence, about time, about health, about whether we still matter the way we once did. Questions nobody on television asks, questions nobody's busy enough to sit with. I didn't plan to ask Jesus anything dramatic. I wasn't searching for a prophecy or a headline. I was sitting alone, and something in me finally admitted what I'd been carrying. A quiet fear that the best chapters were already behind me. A quiet wondering about what someone like me is supposed to do first when another year opens its door. So I prayed, not out loud, just honest. And what I asked him came from the place many of us live now, whether we say it or not. I asked him what seniors should do first as 2026 approaches. Not what the world says, not what fear says, what he says. Stay with me. In a moment, I'll share the answer that met me there. It was simple, it was gentle, and it unsettled everything I thought I knew about this season of life. That night turned into an early morning before I realized it. I was sitting at my kitchen table while the sky was still undecided, blue and gray mixing like old paint. My hands were wrapped around a warm cup, and the house was making those soft sounds only an empty house makes. The refrigerator humming, wood settling, the distant bark of a dog I couldn't see. It felt like the house itself was breathing. In that quiet, my own body felt louder than usual. A stiffness in my fingers, a heaviness in my knees when I shifted. I thought about friends whose numbers are still in my phone but no longer answer. I thought about how often my children's lives seem to move on screens I don't fully understand. I felt the strange grief of watching the world change faster than my heart can keep up. I didn't come to Jesus that morning strong. I didn't come inspired. I came tired. I came carrying the kind of questions people like us don't always say out loud because they sound ungrateful. I wasn't asking him to fix the world. I wasn't asking about politics, money, or survival. I wasn't even asking about the future. I was asking about the heart. I was asking what someone my age is meant to do first when another year opens. I was asking what really matters when so much has already been lived. There was no vision, no voice in the room, just a quiet sense of being seen. And what began to rise in me, the longer I sat there, the more I realized how deeply I had absorbed the world's quiet message about getting older. That later years are mainly about managing decline, staying careful, staying small, staying out of the way. That once the strength fades and the crowds thin, our real contribution is behind us. Many of us were never told that out loud, but we feel it in the way culture stops speaking to us. And little by little, fear replaces calling. But what began stirring in me that morning was different. It felt like a gentle contradiction, a reminder that age is not God's way of sidelining a life. It is often his way of positioning one. At our age, clarity grows where ambition once lived. Depth forms where noise once ruled. There is an authority that doesn't raise its voice, but carries weight simply because it has walked with God through seasons. I started to sense that what I had been calling loss might also be preparation, the empty hours, the quieter house, the friendships that changed, even the limits in my body. What if some of what we mourn is actually space God is creating? Space for listening, space for seeing, space for becoming the kind of person who can carry peace into anxious rooms. The question in my heart came back, but it sounded different now. Not, what should seniors do to survive another year? But what should seniors do first? Not first on a schedule, but first in the soul. And that's where the part that changed everything began. Because what I felt from Jesus wasn't a task, it wasn't a warning, it wasn't a list. Ruth came to mind while I was still sitting there because her story has lived in my heart for years. Ruth is 72. She was married for almost 5 decades, and when her husband passed, she told me the nights were lonely, but the mornings were worse. She said waking up felt like remembering all over again. She still set out 2 cups some days before she caught herself. She still reached for the far side of the bed in the dark. She kept her routines because they were familiar. Same chair, same window, same radio station low in the background. Her faith didn't disappear after her loss, but she once told me it grew quieter and heavier at the same time. Her prayers became shorter, mostly endurance prayers. Help me get through today. Help me not fall apart. She believed in God, but she no longer expected anything new from him. What Ruth didn't say at first, but eventually admitted, was that she felt finished. Useful in the past tense. Loved? Yes. Forgiven? Yes. But chosen now? Needed now? She wasn't so sure. She thought this chapter of life was mainly about waiting it out with dignity. The change in her didn't come through a big moment. It came one ordinary morning when she told God, "I don't know what to do with these hours." She said she was about to ask him to fill her time when something in her stopped. Instead, she asked him to fill her, not her calendar, her heart. She didn't suddenly become busy. She became present. She started sitting with him instead of talking at him. Some days she wept. Some days she said nothing at all. But she told me something softened. The empty chair didn't vanish, but it stopped defining the room. When I asked Jesus what seniors should do first, Ruth's quiet shift is what echoed back to me, because before purpose returned to her life, presence returned to her heart. As I stayed with that feeling, I realized what had begun forming in me were not instructions, but truths, not complicated ones, not heavy ones, just three simple truths Jesus impressed on my heart. And the first one met me almost immediately. Before fixing anything, I am invited to return to closeness. At our age, so many of us quietly live in self-correction. We review our lives like old journals, circling what we wish we'd done differently. We manage our fears. We manage our health. We manage our emotions. Even our prayers can become management prayers. Help me be better. Help me not worry. Help me hold on. And there is nothing wrong with those prayers. But I felt how rarely I rested. What stirred in me that morning was not urgency to change my life, but an invitation to come back to him. Not to prepare the world, not to prepare my family, not even to prepare myself, just to sit with him, to let my heart be near his again. Like returning to a familiar chair after standing too long. It reminded me of how many people discover late in life that they spent years fixing what only closeness could heal. We try to correct loneliness instead of bringing it to him. We try to correct regret instead of laying it down. We try to correct fear instead of letting ourselves be held inside it. If you're watching and you're over 55, I'd love to know who I'm sitting with tonight. You can quietly type your age and where you're watching from, not for numbers, for connection. Because this season is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the one who has never moved away from you. And as gently as that first truth settled in me, I knew it wasn't the only thing he was showing me. Thomas is 68, and when he first retired, he told me the silence scared him more than the long hours ever had. For 40 years, someone needed him every morning. Decisions waited on his desk. People called his name. Then suddenly, no one was asking. No one was waiting. The days opened wide, and instead of feeling free, he felt erased. He started filling every hour, hardware store projects, long drives with no destination, television humming even when he wasn't watching. He laughed easily, but he told me small things made him angry now. Slow lines, dropped tools, empty afternoons. Underneath it all was a fear he didn't like to touch, the fear that his best years were over, that whatever made him useful had already been spent. Thomas didn't drift from God, but he stayed busy around him. He listened to sermons, he read verses, yet he avoided the quiet places where the real questions waited. He once said, "If I stop, I might hear things I don't want to hear." What changed him was almost nothing. He chose one chair by his window. Every morning, before turning anything on, he sat there. Some days he spoke to Jesus, some days he didn't. He just stayed. He said it felt awkward at first, like meeting an old friend after a long misunderstanding. But slowly, the restlessness softened. The anger thinned. The noise inside him settled. One afternoon he told me, with tears he didn't expect, "I don't feel shelved anymore. I feel seen." Thomas didn't find a new job, he found himself again. Or maybe he let himself be found, and his quiet return prepared my heart for more. The second truth met me more slowly, but it carried a different kind of weight. When I asked Jesus what seniors should do first, he did not give me a plan. He did not outline a strategy. He did not hand me a list of protections, preparations, or precautions. What I felt instead was an invitation into surrender. At our age, so much of what reaches us is built on fear. Messages about staying ahead, locking down, protecting what's left, bracing for what's coming. Even faith conversations can quietly turn into control conversations. How to secure peace, how to preserve strength, how to manage decline. And without realizing it, our hands close, our schedules harden, our prayers tighten. But what stirred in me that morning was the opposite posture. Open hands, softer days, a listening heart instead of a guarded one. I sensed that Jesus was far less concerned with how prepared I looked and far more concerned with how yielded I was becoming. I had to ask myself something honestly, and maybe you can too. Have you felt that tightening in your spirit when you think about the future, that subtle bracing, that quiet need to stay in control of what might be slipping beyond it? Because surrender is not giving up. It is not resignation. It is not passivity. It is positioning. It is placing the weight of the next season where it belongs. Not on aging shoulders, but on eternal ones. It is trusting that God is not waiting for us to organize the rest of our lives before He meets us in them. The more I sat with that, the more I realized surrender was not the end of strength. It was the doorway back into it. A different kind of strength, the kind that does not come from managing outcomes, but from abiding inside care. And as gentle as that second truth was, the third one surprised me even more. Elena is 81, and her world has grown very small. Chronic illness has slowly taken pieces of her independence, and with them, the roles she once loved. She no longer volunteers the way she used to. She no longer hosts the loud family dinners she once took pride in. Most days, her strength is measured in hours, sometimes minutes. When I first met her, she spoke often about who she used to be. She said it gently, but there was grief under it, a belief that her season of impact had closed. What remained was mostly waiting. She still believed in God, but she believed her usefulness to Him had passed. What changed Elena did not change her circumstances. One morning, unable to sleep, she began whispering names. Children, neighbors, old friends, people she hadn't spoken to in years. She told me she didn't plan it. She just started placing faces before Jesus. Every morning after that, she did the same, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes until she was tired again. Weeks later, letters began arriving. One woman wrote to thank her for a note Elena didn't remember sending. A nephew called after years of silence. A neighbor started sitting with her in the afternoons, saying there was peace in her home he couldn't explain. Elena's life did not grow bigger, it grew deeper. Her small room became a well people drew from without knowing why. And when she told me, "I think this is what I'm here for now," I felt the third truth stirring. Because what Jesus was showing me was not about activity at all. It was about abiding. The third truth did not arrive like a thought. It arrived like a release. What Jesus impressed on me most was this: abide first. Not achieve first, not solve first, not prepare first, abide. I felt it in my body before I understood it in my mind. The tightness I'd been carrying in my chest softened. The quiet pressure to figure out the rest of my life loosened its grip. It was as if something inside me finally stopped bracing. I realized how long I had been living as though the future were something to survive instead of somewhere God already was. Abide first. Stay. Remain. Let your life rest where it already is. It felt like a doorway opening, not outward, but inward. A simple invitation into a place I had known before but drifted from. A place where I am not useful or useless, ahead or behind, strong or fading, just a present. And being present with Him, I sensed, was the first work of any season. I believe this is a window for many of us, not a dramatic one, a quiet one, a holy one, a chance to begin again, not by rearranging our lives, but by returning our hearts. This window won't stay open forever because time itself is precious. But it is open now, and I don't feel fear in that. I feel kind. I don't see 2026 as a threat anymore. I see it as an altar, a place to lay down control, a place to bring our questions, a place to sit instead of striving, a place to abide before anything else is asked of us. And because this is not something to think about alone, I don't want to move forward without prayer. Not a prayer spoken over you, but one I want to pray with you right where you are. Jesus, I come to you just as I am tonight. Not polished, not strong, just here. I thank you that I don't have to travel anywhere to find you because you are already in this room with me, in this living room, this hospital room, this lonely kitchen, this quiet bedroom. I open my hands to you now. I release what I have been gripping, the worries I keep rehearsing, the regrets I keep revisiting, the future I keep trying to manage. I place this coming year in your care, not as a plan, but as an offering. Jesus, I want to return to closeness. I don't want to talk about you. I want to sit with you. I don't want to fix myself before I come. I want to come so you can hold what I cannot fix. If there is any heaviness in me, I give it to you. If there is any bitterness, I soften it in your presence. If there is any fear about what is ahead, I lay it down gently, the way a tired child lays down their head. Thank you for staying with me through every season of my life. Thank you for not rushing me. Thank you for not measuring me by what I can produce. Thank you for calling me yours. As this new year approaches, I choose to abide, I choose to trust, I choose to rest my heart. Amen. Tonight, I don't want to leave you with a speech. I want to leave you with two gentle steps, not duties, not goals, just invitations. The first is for today. Before you turn on anything else, before the mind starts running its familiar paths, give Jesus 5 quiet minutes. Sit somewhere simple, a chair, the edge of the bed, the kitchen table. You don't have to say much. You can whisper his name. You can breathe. You can place one person in your heart and hold them before him. Let this be a moment of presence, not performance. The second is for this week. Choose one small way to make stillness part of your days. It might be returning to that same chair each morning. It might be writing a short note to someone you haven't spoken to in a long time. It might be offering a gentle apology. It might be praying for the same name every day. Nothing dramatic, nothing heavy, just faithful. At our age, small faithfulness carries great weight. Quiet choices shape deep places. A softened heart can bless more than a busy one ever could. You are not being asked to rebuild your life. You are being invited to tend it. With me tonight now. Thank you for staying with me through this quiet conversation. It means more than you know that you chose to give these minutes to your heart. At our age, presence is precious, and so are you. Your life still carries weight. Your prayers still shape rooms you may never enter. Your gentleness still teaches in ways noise never could. If this time I spoke to you, you're welcome to tell me who you are in the comments, just your age and where you're watching from. Or simply write yes if you felt something soften inside you. We find each other in these small signals. If you'd like to keep walking these late-night conversations together, you can subscribe and join this quiet circle. Not to grow a channel, but to stay connected in a season where connection matters. And now, before we part, I speak a blessing over you. May peace rest in your home, strengthen your body, and quiet trust carry you into the coming year with Jesus always. Amen.